let's start talking again about agency. I know we had a big round of that, and it'll be a big part of your national exam with 10 test questions. You're also going to have a group, I believe, of about 5 test questions around agency on the state portion of the exam. And the first thing I want to break up as you're starting to get into these relationships with prospective clients, you maybe get a sign call for one of your listings. Someone finds your business on a Google page and asks about buying a home. You get a lead, you start showing them houses and get pre-approved. How does this relationship get solidified? And there's really 2 references I want you to know as we work through this in terms of definitions. You've got ministerial acts and you've got specific assistance. A ministerial act by definition is just hosting an open house, showing a client a property, a prospective client a property. Someone calls you and says, how much do you have 123 Main Street listed for? And you say, I've got listed for 165.9. That's a ministerial act. Where we go into specific assistance with our agency relationships is when we start to learn things of a confidential matter. Anything that would put them at a disadvantage when negotiating. And my 3 big rocks for that are their strategy, their motivation, and their finances. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story here. I once had someone call me as a referral from a past client and a good friend of mine. She said, Amy, I need your help. I've got a townhome I found at an open house yesterday, and I want to write an offer. And so I went, I showed her the property. I had done some comparables. It was listed for 180. Nothing in that association in the last 18 months had sold for more than 176. So we're writing up the offer, and as we get to talking, she discloses that she had met the listing agent, of course, at the open house. And while she was there, this agent asked her a ton of questions about being pre-approved, what down payment money she had, when she needed to close, asked all of these details. And as this buyer was leaving the open house, she said, oh, by the way, I not only represent the seller, but she's my aunt. Well, that's what prompted this particular buyer to go to work the next Monday and say, oh my gosh, I have this agent ask me all these questions thinking that she was on my team and helping me, all the while to find out she was representing the seller who's a family member. And I told her that I was in a terrible divorce and needed a quick close. I told her I was pre-approved for well more than the purchase price, and then I had a $50,000 down payment. And sure enough, when we wrote that offer at 176, because that's what the market showed, the agent literally countered back to me and said, we're countering full price because we know your buyer can afford it. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Was any of that fair, what the agent did at that open house to that buyer? No. Before she learned anything about specific assistance, any of those confidential issues, down payment, top approval dollar, what she was willing to pay, her motivation because of the divorce, before that buyer opened up any of that, she should have at least, at minimum, verbally said, now, before you tell me anything confidential, I've got to let you know I represent the seller. I'm allowed to do dual agency, but only with permission of both of you. So before you tell me anything, I need to put that out there to you. And by the way, my aunt is also the seller. It's a family member. So for any reason you don't think that I would give you fair representation, before you tell me that confidential information, maybe you should consider whether whether you want to work together or not. Something like that, and didn't do it. It's completely unfair to the public. So what this first page that you read really entails is, before you learn anything confidential, this level of where we go from a ministerial act of just showing the property to specific assistance where we learn confidential information, you got to disclose the agency relationship, at least verbally, but of course, in writing is even better. That way, everyone is clear about the rules of engagement. Now, your broker should have a written company policy around what types of agency they allow. Some brokerages in your community may only do dual agency, or they only may do seller representation and buyer unrepresentation. They may do both, where we've got seller appointed agency and buyer appointed agency, or they may allow dual agency. And I know some brokerages that don't allow dual agency at all. So make sure you check with your broker what agencies are allowed. But again, single agency is where you represent only one party in the transaction. Dual agency is when you represent both buyer and seller. It is not when I represent a buyer at 123 Main Street and then I represent them as a seller at 123 Banana Street. That's single agency twice. Again, dual agency is buyer and seller, same transaction that you represent. One last thing that I want to point out here about dual agency as well is agents within your firm. So let's say you sell a listing that is at your brokerage. Agent XYZ has the listing, and you also have the listing at the same brokerage. That is not dual agency. That is single agency within the same brokerage. So that's one other key here that is pointed out.